What if the most decisive battles of this war are unfolding far from the places we expect? What if the fate of an entire nation is being decided not by soldiers charging through ruined streets or tanks rolling across muddy fields, but by what happens behind the scenes, in the silent corridors of power, beneath the city streets, and along the arteries of steel and wire that keep a country alive? In Kyiv, the capital that once awoke to birdsong and sunrise, dawn now arrives with the piercing shriek of air raid sirens. Every morning, the city stirs, not to the sounds of normal life, but to the haunting wail that has become the soundtrack of survival. Yet, even as the world's cameras focus on Kyiv's battered skyline or on the shattered facades of frontline cities, a deeper and more decisive struggle brews, one that unfolds below the headlines, and sometimes quite literally beneath the streets themselves. Consider the battered landscape near Pokrovsk in the southern Donbass. This once industrious city, scarred by months of relentless shelling, now stands nearly encircled. Its defenders cling to what remains, as Russian forces tighten their grip with every sunrise. Ukrainian troops, desperate to slow the advance, have resorted to flooding underground tunnels and corridors, turning what were once vital passageways for movement and resupply into muddy, treacherous snares. It is a tactic born of necessity, and it exposes just how dire their predicament has become. But while the world's attention is locked onto these dramatic clashes at the front, another, quieter conflict is underway. This is a campaign not for territory, but for the very lifeblood of Ukraine. The supply lines, the power grids, the networks that sustain both the military and the millions of civilians who depend on them. Precision missile strikes and swarms of drones no longer strike blindly. Instead, they meticulously pick their targets: railway junctions, transformer stations, bridges, and storage depots. These are the arteries and veins of a modern nation at war. Each is chosen for maximum effect, to paralyze the movement of troops and supplies, to plunge entire cities into darkness, and to choke off the flow of fuel, food, and hope. To overlook this hidden war is to misunderstand the true forces shaping the outcome. Here, victory may not come from capturing ruined streets or raising flags over city halls, but from the silent collapse, or the stubborn survival, of the systems that keep Ukraine alive behind the lines. Let us step back from the explosions and the headlines. Let us look deeper and uncover the invisible struggle now determining Ukraine's fate. To truly grasp this new phase of conflict, we must follow the trails of supply, power, and willpower, deep into the systems that hold a nation together. Only then can we understand what is truly at risk, and what the coming months may bring. While fighting rages in the south and east, the real danger is tightening far from the front lines shown on maps. Headlines showcase sudden offensives and dramatic drone footage, but Ukraine's fate is being shaped in quieter, grimmer battles, where entire cities balance on the edge of destruction, and where a single broken link can trigger disaster. Take Pokrovsk, for example. This city, now almost surrounded on three sides, has become a symbol of the war's brutal logic. Russian forces close in relentlessly, seizing vital sites, schools, universities, even the courthouse. Ukrainian defenders, forced to improvise, have begun flooding sewers and underground corridors, mining gas pipelines, and turning scraps of metal and debris into barricades. These are desperate measures, reminiscent of the most harrowing moments in 20th century sieges, like the defense of Leningrad during the Second World War, when every street, every basement, and every tunnel became a battleground for survival. Russian troops grind forward yard by yard, guided by precise artillery and constant airstrikes. These attacks are not simply about breaking defenses. They are calculated to sever Pokrovsk's last lifelines. Supplies, evacuations, and hope itself are being choked away, just as Nazi forces once sought to starve out the defenders of Stalingrad by cutting off the Volga River crossings. Farther north, in Kupiansk, the story is different, but no less grim. Ukrainian positions shrink daily as supply lines are targeted with unrelenting precision. Over half the city is now contested or effectively isolated, and defenders are running dangerously low on ammunition, food, and medical aid. This is a modern echo of the siege of Sarajevo, where control of roads and supply corridors meant the difference between survival and starvation. But it is not only enemy fire that tests the limits of survival. Autumn in Ukraine brings endless rain and mud, turning roads into impassable swamps. Destroyed bridges and constant shelling make rotations, resupply, and medical evacuations a logistical nightmare. Vehicles bog down in the muck. Soldiers slog through waist-deep sludge, every step shadowed by the threat of ambush or drone attack. The mud of the Eastern Front, infamous in both world wars, has returned as a silent foe. The risk is stark. If Pokrovsk or Kupiansk falls, Ukraine may suffer a cascading logistical collapse. The loss of just a handful of cities could unravel entire regional defenses, endangering not only military control, but the lives and morale of countless civilians who rely on those supply lines. Yet as dire as these battles are, the war's true turning point is not about flags raised over city halls or piles of rubble. The real struggle is shifting away from the obvious front lines, fought instead over the rails, wires, and arteries that keep Ukraine alive. As winter draws near, the contest for survival shifts to a deeper, more invisible front. It is on these hidden battlegrounds that Ukraine's fate will be decided. What happens when the lights go out and the trains grind to a halt? In Ukraine, this is no longer a nightmare, but a spreading reality that unfolds daily. Russian forces have changed tactics. Gone are the sporadic missile strikes. Now, they are relentlessly targeting Ukraine's beating heart, the intertwined systems of logistics and energy. Power stations, substations, railway depots. These are not hit one by one, but shattered in coordinated waves, each strike carefully timed to multiply the damage. Look at Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city. Recent bombardments have plunged vast districts into total darkness. Blackouts consume entire neighborhoods, paralyzing civilian life and military command alike. Hospitals are forced back to candlelight, families huddle in freezing apartments, and commanders struggle to keep even the faintest signals alive. It is a scenario eerily reminiscent of the blackouts that struck London during the Blitz, when darkness became both a defense and a torment. The railways, once the backbone of Ukraine's supply lines, are now under siege. Main lines and critical depots are smashed in rapid succession. Trains loaded with ammunition, fuel, and food are stranded or rerouted onto rickety secondary tracks, never meant for heavy cargo. Every locomotive lost, every severed rail, means days, sometimes weeks, of delay for supplies desperately needed at the front. It is a logistical nightmare that echoes the Allied bombing campaigns of the Second World War, which targeted German rail hubs to cripple the Wehrmacht's mobility and supply. Emergency reserves are dwindling. Mobile generators, spare diesel, and backup locomotives are consumed faster than they can be replaced. The margin for error, always slim, is now razor-thin. Military analysts warn that one large, coordinated attack could freeze the entire supply system before the true winter cold descends, leading to a crisis reminiscent of the winter of 1941, when Soviet troops and civilians nearly perished for lack of supplies. If logistics collapse, frontline units are left exposed. No fuel, no ammunition, no food. Positions that once seemed secure may be abandoned, or worse, encircled, cut off, forced to surrender in numbers. The danger does not stop with soldiers. Millions of civilians could face blackout, hunger, even humanitarian catastrophe. This is not speculation. It is a pattern seen in wars from Leningrad to Aleppo. As the grid flickers and rail lines freeze, another battlefront is opening, not only on the ground, but in the corridors of political power. The struggle for control now extends far beyond the trenches. Every blackout, every stalled train, sends ripples through Ukraine's government and its allies. As the hidden threads of Ukraine's defense begin to snap, the struggle for survival becomes both internal and external. On paper, the front lines seem to hold, but reality tells a harsher story. Ukrainian soldiers cling to their positions, yet their lifelines have been cut short. Supplies and ammunition run low. Every attempt at resupply is a gamble with fate. Defenses are now counted in days rather than weeks. This is no longer a war of swift assaults. Instead, it is a grueling contest of endurance, a slow, punishing duel between General Gerasimov of Russia and General Syrskyi of Ukraine. Russia's strategy is clear. Squeeze the lifeblood from Ukraine's war machine, one broken rail, one sabotaged power station, one missing truckload at a time. It is a strategy that echoes the attrition warfare of the First World War, where victory was measured not in territory gained, but in resources denied and resilience exhausted. The effects ripple beyond the trenches. In major cities, rolling blackouts become routine. Trains and trucks stall, stranded by fuel shortages and dead power lines. Grocery shelves empty. As the first breaths of winter settle, millions face the cold without heat, turning every night into a fight for survival. In Odessa, the fractures widen. The mayor is ousted, accused of being too close to Russian interests. This abrupt purge exposes deep rifts within Ukraine's political ranks. Whispers of betrayal, rumors of internal purges, and swelling suspicion infect the air. It is a political atmosphere that recalls the paranoia of Paris in 1940, when occupation and collaboration haunted every conversation. Fear breeds faster than hope. Word spreads of a secret Western plan to divide Ukraine once the fighting ends. Supposedly, maps drawn up in Paris show new borders waiting to be imposed. True or not, these rumors spark anxiety and distrust, fueling doubts within the public and leadership alike. The specter of partition, real or imagined, gnaws at the nation's resolve. Each blackout, each removed official, deepens the crisis. Ukraine now stands at a precipice, threatened not just by advancing armies, but by fragmentation from within, political chaos, social collapse, even the specter of being partitioned by foreign hands. As Ukraine's resolve is tested on every front, new decisions must be made, and the cost of each misstep grows higher. The war's next phase will demand more than endurance. It will require reinvention. History offers sobering lessons. When the British faced the Blitz, they reorganized civil defense, rationed food, and built new supply chains. When besieged cities in Syria or Yemen ran out of options, communities improvised underground hospitals and smuggled food through tunnels. Survival demands adaptation. Each failed supply run and every blackout leaves scars. But with every blow, Ukraine adapts. Resilience is no longer a slogan. It is a daily imperative. You see it in rapid repair teams converging on bombed substations before sunrise, in volunteers dragging medical kits by hand across fields too sodden for vehicles, in the relentless rationing and ingenious use of agricultural drones to bypass shattered rail lines. These are not just tales of courage. They reveal the true metric of war readiness: the capacity to keep electricity surging, trains rolling, and people fed even as the foundation shakes. Energy is more than warmth. It powers command centers, keeps communications alive, and moves ammunition to the front. Food is not just fuel, it is hope. Every gap or delay in these networks is a weakness, waiting to be exploited. Winter now magnifies every shortfall. Roads dissolve into seas of mud. Diesel thickens and freezes. Blackouts stretch into endless hours. Repairs drag on through nights where the air bites below freezing, and each broken wire or rail threatens catastrophe. The silent contest to keep infrastructure alive has become as vital as any firefight. To win this war, mindsets must shift. Victory is not only won by territory or heroism, but by stamina, by adaptability, by the invisible labor that keeps the country breathing. Networks of repair crews, backup power systems, and creative supply routes are now as crucial as tanks or artillery. Ukraine's fate hinges on its ability to absorb blow after blow, to innovate under siege, to outlast calculated disruption. For outsiders and policymakers, the lesson is urgent. Supporting Ukraine means more than sending weapons. It is diesel for generators, transformers for battered grids, skilled engineers, and logistics chains designed to bend but not break. The outcome of future wars will hinge not just on frontline battles, but on what happens in shadows, on the rails, in the substations, around kitchen tables. Western aid, for example, could take the form of mobile power stations, repair teams, and spare parts for locomotives and transformers. In World War II, the Lend-Lease program sent not just tanks, but thousands of trucks and repair kits, often the difference between a stalled army and a victorious one. Ignore this silent war, and its hardest lessons will repeat elsewhere. If we see only the visible struggle, we miss what truly determines survival, and what may decide the fate of nations. The sieges of Leningrad, Aleppo, and Grozny all teach the same lesson. Logistics, infrastructure, and the spirit to adapt are the keys to enduring catastrophe. But even the most resilient systems have limits. The coming weeks will test just how much hardship Ukraine can endure before something breaks. Already, reports abound of families rationing food, hospitals operating on generator power for days, and entire towns relying on volunteer convoys to deliver the basics of life. The strain is cumulative, and the breaking point is never far away. This war is not only fought where the guns thunder and trenches scar the earth. It is also waged in every silent corridor of wire, steel, and circuitry behind the front. The outcome hinges, often invisibly, on the endurance of those who repair, supply, and adapt. On the quiet victories at every switch, every rail, every humming transformer. Modern conflict is shaped less by dramatic charges or last stands than by a relentless contest of attrition. Each time a stretch of railway is cleared, each time a power grid is patched together, or a shipment of ammunition slips through the chaos to reach embattled fighters, it marks a turning point unseen by headlines. As missiles and drones gouge new wounds in Ukraine's energy grid, as bridges and depots are reduced to smoldering ruins, a new reality emerges. Survival depends on the unyielding work of restoration. The arteries of the nation, power stations, supply lines, roads, must be kept open, no matter the cost or danger. This winter, the true front lines lie in power plants cloaked in darkness and in teams racing to reconnect shattered substations under threat. Convoys grind through mud and shellfire to reach cities under siege. Here, the struggle is not just for ground, but for the very ability to endure a siege of exhaustion and deprivation. When trains halt, when warehouses stand empty, when homes flicker into blackness, both army and civilian are left exposed. Hope risks dimming as surely as the lights. Victory or defeat now depends not solely on courage at the front, but on the persistence of those who keep the nation breathing under attack. Understanding this battle for logistics, for energy, for infrastructure is essential. It reveals that true victory is decided by the power to endure, to repair, to supply, and to sustain longer than the enemy. In this war, time itself is a weapon. Patience becomes armor, resilience, the shield between collapse and survival. As the days shorten and the freeze deepens, Ukraine's survival rests on this hidden war, where every restored cable, every reopened road, every delivery of food or fuel becomes a lifeline stretched taut against despair. So as we watch the headlines and the maps, let us remember, the most decisive battles may be those we never see. The fate of Ukraine, and the lessons for the future, will be written not only in trenches and city squares, but in the silent, unyielding work of those who keep the lights burning, the trains running, and hope alive. This is the war behind the war, and in the weeks and months ahead, its outcome will shape not just Ukraine, but the world.